lousy day today, but we've had a drive out anyway. I'm going to have a look at a fundamental driving skill if you drive a manual car, and that's how to change gear. I'm sure you have your own ideas about how to change gear and how to change gear correctly. You've probably been doing it for years. But there's never any harm in revisiting these basic skills. If you can change gear correctly, that skill will transfer and blend into the other things that we're going to look at in some of the other videos. Now there's a whole section, a whole chapter on changing gear in the book, so if you haven't got yourself a copy, go over to Amazon. It's available through the Amazon website, and there's a link at the bottom of this video. So today we're going to look at a couple of key aspects of changing gear. How you move the gear stick, which may sound fairly basic, but bear with me. And then the second key skill that we're going to look at is how you operate the throttle while you're changing gear. And the throttle, the accelerator pedal, is the key to making your gear changes smoothly. Now if you're wondering why we're so interested in changing gear smoothly, it's very important to keep the car balanced, particularly when you're pressing on and driving quickly. Braking, accelerating, changing gear, all these actions involve weight transfer. So that's the weight of the vehicle moving forwards and backwards, altering grip levels all the time on the front wheels and the back wheels. And it's how you balance that weight transfer that keeps the car settled, like I said, particularly when you're pressing on at speed. So it's very important that all the actions that you carry out within the car that affect the balance of the car are done smoothly, so that the transition from one to another is carried out smoothly. You're not catching the car out by surprise. I mentioned this in the last video. Don't try and catch the car out. Let the car know what you're going to do and do everything smoothly. So let's go and park up for a few minutes and let's have a look at how we operate the gear stick, and then we'll talk about use of the throttle, and I'll try and give you a practical demonstration. So we're going to start by looking at the gear stick and a couple of very simple principles in relation to the gear stick. The first is where the gear stick's sprung, where the mechanism naturally makes the gear stick fall. So when the vehicle's in neutral, the gear stick is sprung so that it will sit between third and fourth gear. And what I mean by that is if you push the gear stick forward with no sideways pressure, it'll go into third, and if you pull it straight back with no sideways pressure, it'll go into fourth. So bearing that springing of the gear stick in mind, we need to make sure when we're selecting gears that we put the pressure in the right direction. Now if we don't, there's a danger you might end up with the wrong gear, which could be inconvenient at best and sort of mechanically destructive at worst. So the way I do this is think in terms of thumb up or thumb down. So for first and second gear, if you put your thumb down, you will naturally put pressure to the left, and you'll find first gear much more easily. And for second gear, thumb down, and move the gear stick backwards for second gear. Then for third, fourth and fifth, thumb up. So we'll just use the natural springing effect, push the gear stick forward, gear stick back, and then for fifths we've got the palm in the right direction to push the pressure over towards the right. So in very simple terms again then, I'll talk about thumb down for first and second, and thumb up for third, fourth and fifth. The other thing I want you to bear in mind is that actually there's no rush in changing gear. If you're doing things properly and you're planning properly on the road, you're planning your approach to hazards correctly, you should have a phase within that planning, within that system, that will allow you to change gear nice and smoothly into the gear that you want. There's no need to change up and down the gearbox sequentially, so you don't need to always go first, second, third, fourth, fifth, fourth, third, second, first. You can skip gears, you can skip an intermediate gear if that's appropriate at the time, and we'll look at that in a little bit when we're on the road. And the other thing I like to encourage people to do is sort of acknowledge the fact that there's a neutral phase between the gears, between the gear changes. So we're not going first to second, second to third, third to fourth. We're actually going out of first into neutral, and then from neutral into second. From second into neutral, and from neutral into third. And if you bear that mental process in mind, you'll just slow your gear changing down very slightly, which makes for a smoother gear change. So what's the secret to changing gears smoothly then? Well, actually, despite the fact you might think it's how you operate the clutch or how you operate the gear stick, although those elements form a part of the secret to changing gears smoothly, the real key is in what you do with your right foot on the accelerator. By which I mean that whenever you're changing gear, whether you're changing up the gearbox or down the gearbox, you should be managing the engine speed with your right foot rather than just releasing the accelerator. You should be managing the engine speed so that it matches the road speed for the next gear into which you're going to change. So by way of an explanation, if you're changing from third to fourth gear at 40 miles an hour, your car might be sitting at 3,000 revs in third gear, and it might drop to 2,000 revs at fourth gear. What a lot of drivers do, and what actually the majority of drivers do, is press the clutch, release the accelerator completely. The engine revs drop right down to tick over, which in this car is about 750 revs. They then change gear, release the clutch, and when they release the clutch, they reconnect the gearbox and the driven wheels with the engine. And at that point, the road speed then brings the engine speed back up to 3,000 revs, to 2,000 revs. And that's what introduces a shunt or a jerk into the drive line of the car. So if you're in a car with somebody who changes gear particularly jerkily or roughly, that's what they're doing. They're lifting off the accelerator completely. Now, if you can manage that engine speed so that you use your right foot on the accelerator to set the engine speed for the road speed for the next gear into which you're changing, then you'll smooth your gear changes out. So by way of an example, I'm going to pull over on the left here and then set off from stationary, and I'm going to do my gear changes fairly slowly, really, just to demonstrate the principle, but don't think that you need to change gear as slowly as this. So, mirrors in first gear. I'll change from first to second gear, release the accelerator before I press the clutch, let the engine revs drop down, but I'm not releasing the accelerator completely. You notice I just let the revs drop down to the point where I'm going to bring the clutch up. Do it again, second to third gear, nice and smoothly, and then third to fourth gear. So actually, even though I'm doing it very slowly, it's quite difficult to talk about it because I'd have to be talking at 1,000 miles an hour like the bloke who does the small print on the lawn adverts on the radio. So let's look at that again, but let's do it at normal speed just to demonstrate that actually when you're moving the car along, you can introduce these principles of smoothness without rushing your gear changes. So let's move the car along, second to third gear, nice and smoothly, third to fourth gear, not letting the revs drop off completely, just releasing the clutch at the right point, and fourth to fifth gear. Changing down through the gearbox, the principle is exactly the same. We need to match the engine speed to the road speed in the next gear in which you're going to change to. So let's get the car up to about 40 miles an hour. Fourth gear. So I'm going to change down to third. Watch what I do with my right foot on the accelerator and watch the needle on the rev counter as I change down to third gear. Raise the revs and then smoothly release the clutch. And we can do it down to second gear as well. Nice big raise of the revs, and it's a smooth gear change. Back up to third, fourth gear. The road speed isn't changing. We're not feeling the gear change. You can definitely hear it, and you can see it through the rev counter, but we're not feeling the gear change in the car. And if you don't feel it, the car doesn't feel it either. So let's look at that again. 50 miles an hour, 4th gear. I'll change down through the box to 3rd and raise the revs. And I'm going to change down to 2nd, 50 miles an hour. You can hear it, you can see it on the rev counter. You can't feel it in the car, and the car can't feel it either. And that's the key principle in changing gear smoothly. So let's apply it in this downhill run. So we're pressing on. We're going to brake nice and firmly and then change down. So we're braking here, taking a position for the corner, coming off the brakes, raising the revs, 3rd gear, and balancing the car on the throttle as we go around the corner. Keeping the car balanced, near side position, looking ahead. As the road opens up, and you can see the limit point of that corner opening up ahead of us, smoothly up through the gearbox. So that's it, smooth use of the gearbox, smooth gear changing. We're going to incorporate that into a lot of the other stuff that we're going to cover in the videos. So if you've seen one of the later videos, you're wondering about gear changing, keeping it as smooth as possible, those are the principles behind it. So that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want an update when there's further videos. Press the like button if you've enjoyed it. And don't forget to bob over to Amazon, have a look at the book, Advanced and Performance Driving. You can click on the ebook and read the first couple of chapters for free. See what you think. I'm Reg Local, and we'll see you next time.